Thank you for joining us at this hour. I'm Daniel Choy here with the latest. We begin with some somber news updates on the tragic Sewol-ho ferry sinking that took more than 248 lives. Though the search continues, many relatives fear they may never see their loved ones again. President Park Geun-hye visited the island on this Sunday to console those who have been in Jindo for weeks. Our Kwon Soa starts us off.
President Park Geun-hye visited Jindo on Saturday afternoon, her second trip to the island after the tragic sinking of the Sewol-ho ferry nearly 3 weeks ago. The president spoke with about 50 relatives of the missing passengers at Paengmok-hang harbor near the accident site. President Park, who lost both of her parents at a young age, said she knows the sadness of losing a family member and that it hurts her to think of how the families must be feeling as they await word of their loved ones. She expressed her condolences to the families and said she feels responsible for the events after the accident occurred and emphasized that the nation's safety infrastructure has to be strengthened. When one relative demanded to know what she would do with regard to Lee Joo-young, the Oceans and Fisheries Minister who has been criticized for mishandling the incident, the president replied that anyone responsible for wrongdoing related to the incident and those who have committed a crime will be punished accordingly. President Park also reviewed the search and recovery operation from a barge at the accident site. She checked the National Forensic Service's progress on identifying recovered bodies, talked with divers engaged in the recovery operation, and urged everyone involved to do their utmost to move the process along. In related news, the first phase of the search and recovery operation is expected to be completed within the next few days. Most of the cabins on the ship have been searched, raising concerns that some of the bodies may already have been swept away. The president vowed that the search would go on.
마지막까지 우리가 하겠다 그렇게 오늘 약속을 드리고 왔습니다. 그리고 실종자 가족들께서 이제 끝내도 된다 하실 때까지 할 거니까.
This means the wreckage of the ship won't be pulled up before the families give their consent. Kwon Soa, Arirang News.
We move on to the investigation of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. Now the team is looking into summoning Yoo Byung-hun, the alleged owner of the ferry operator and the former chairman of Semo Group. Prosecutors have also summoned Yoo's relatives for questioning 2 times, and they have been summoned for a 3rd and final time on May 8th. In related news, Cheonghaejin Marine Chief Kim Han-sik, who is suspected of tax evasion, embezzlement, and secretly working with Yoo, was questioned for a 2nd time on Saturday. Kim said after the session he has nothing more to say than that he is sorry. More than 1 million Koreans from all over the nation have visited memorial altars for the victims of Sewol-ho ferry disaster. And we are not alone. People from around the world, including students in the United States, had a special message for Korea in its time of mourning. Our Son Jung-in has more.
Don't give up. We will always pray for your safe return. Even though we never met, we will always remember you. These colorful notes filled with messages of hope, love, and remembrance cover the message board in Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology in the U.S. state of Virginia. Students as well as teachers all took a moment to join the campaign and wrote messages to commemorate the deceased and missing passengers of the recent Korean ferry tragedy. The words seem to overcome the physical distance and language barrier in hopes that their meaning will reach the victims and their families. Students at Jefferson High also received yellow ribbons to put on their shirts or bags to show their support. The movement was carried out by Korean-American student Sarah Kim, who asked other students to collaborate with her on the project. With Korea still reeling in shock over the tragic accident, Kim and her school took part in the global movement to send condolences. The students hope the passengers realize they're all thinking of them and that they will forever remain in their hearts. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Double rude awakening for us here in Korea. We have another accident that's catching the attention of Korea. Investigation is going on the crash of Seoul's busiest subway line that happened on Friday afternoon. Investigators are now targeting a malfunction in the automatic distance control system as the possible cause of the accident. according to Seoul Metro CEO Chang Jung-woo. Normally, the signals stop and caution are given to approaching trains. But at the time of the accident, the signals given were stop and go ahead. The signal system had been malfunctioning for more than 4 days apparently, and the problem was only discovered after this accident. The collision happened on line number 2 at Sangwang-simni station when one train ran into another that had stopped at the station. More than 240 passengers were injured, but fortunately no fatalities have been reported. Moving on to politics, with about a month left until local elections on June 4th, the National Election Commission has vowed to protect the voters' right to know. The agency said it will unveil the 5 key campaign promises of the candidates for Seoul Education Superintendent and city mayors on its website Monday. The commission will post the information of all candidates in the election on its homepage, including their assets, their military service, and even their criminal records. This information will also be included on the candidates' election posters. Korea won't see any surprise interest rate adjustment in the near future, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol said Sunday. Governor Lee spoke to the press during an Asian Development Bank meeting in Astana, Kazakhstan, where he emphasized that he will proceed with a monetary policy that does not create confusion in the market. He expressed this by saying he won't put his left blinker on and then turn right. He explained that if, for example, there were a need for an interest rate adjustment in 6 months' time, he would offer a signal 2 or 3 months beforehand. North Korea continues its mysterious ways. It appears Pyongyang is improving its relations with Russia while allowing their relations with its oldest and closest ally China turn sour. Our Connie Kim has more.
Amid heightened tensions between North Korea and its closest ally China, ties between Pyongyang and Moscow appear to be improving. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Yuri Trutnev and North Korea's Foreign Trade Ministry struck an agreement on trade and economic cooperation last week during a 3-day visit to Pyongyang by the Russian diplomat.
During the meeting, North Korea and Russia exchanged views on how the two countries could strengthen economic cooperation.
Moscow also gave the isolated nation an unspecified number of fire engines, calling it a warm gesture. The Russian parliament agreed to write off almost $10 billion of the debt North Korea has owed to Moscow since the Cold War era. Experts say the two countries could benefit from new projects in the north, with the secluded state potentially using the money to invest in a proposed Russian gas pipeline and railway into the south, and Russia expanding its influence to Asia. At the same time, relations between North Korea and China appear to have hit a low point. Trade between two countries dropped by more than 2% to about $1.2 billion in the first quarter of this year. China had zero crude oil exports to the isolated nation in the period from January to March, a significant drop from the $170 million in the same period last year. And Beijing lashed out at Pyongyang last month, warning the isolated nation to refrain from pursuing its nuclear ambition.
It seems like North Korea is diversifying its strategy for economic development by moving away from an overdependence on China and toward great cooperation with Russia, which also puts pressure on its neighbor.
However, as Beijing takes up almost 90% of Pyongyang's foreign trade, the success of North Korea's new strategy remains to be seen. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Not unlike Korea, Afghanistan is in a somber mood as well. The government there has declared a national day of mourning for the hundreds presumed dead or missing after a landslide hit a remote village in northeast Afghanistan on Friday. The death toll has been estimated at between 350 to up to 2,700 people. The United Nations says the focus is now on helping the more than 4,000 people who have been displaced by the disaster and are urgently in need of water, medicine, food, and shelter. Afghan officials ended the search for survivors on Saturday. Villagers and a few dozen police equipped with only basic digging tools had searched for survivors early in the day, but hope of finding anyone faded quickly. The Afghan military flew rescue teams to the area later that day, but the government did not ask for their help, indicating that officials had confirmed no survivors would be found. For this Monday, Seoulites are advised not to leave home without their masks as there's a mild amount of yellow dust in the forecast. In Jindo, the site of the Sewol-ho ferry search and recovery operation, rain and stronger currents are expected, unfortunately. And now here are the weather conditions in your neck of the woods and around the world. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. From all of us here at Arirang News, thank you for watching.